Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto met after 8 years Kyuubi and build Harem Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto was walking through the woods following Q with Shien sleeping inside of his shirt and Kaga on top of his head. So Q-chan, have you figured out a training regiment for me and the kids? Q looked up at him and smiled. Why yes, I have, Naru-kun, but first you need to sign my summoning contract, she told him as she looked around for something. Naruto stopped walking as he watched the red fox dig something up from underneath a large tree root. Q dragged a scroll out as Naruto walked up to her. How did you know where it was? He asked as he wiped the dirt off of it. Q giggled at him. Silly, you forget that I'm the queen of all foxes as well as all of the other summons. Naruto went wide-eyed at her statement as he looked down at the scroll. So why do you want someone as weak as me sign it? Q transformed into her human form as she walked up to Naruto and lifted his chin. Because I chose you to be a summoner and you're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for. So in order to sign it you need to write your name in blood and channel chakra into it. When you're done I will take you to train. Naruto cheered up as he looked into her eyes. Alright Q-chan, I would be happy to sign. Naruto unrolled the scroll and noticed that he would be the first person to sign it and looked up at Q and smiled. I guess that I'm really special to be the first, huh? He took out his kunai and sliced his thumb to sign as Q has instructed. You are correct, Naru-kun. Only other human that was qualified to sign was the Sage of Six Paths, but since he was the creator of my realm and the others he could summon us without signing. Q told him as she thought of the only other man she loved but would never tell Naruto. She walked up to Naruto and rolled up the scroll and showed Naruto the necessary hand signs to summon. Naruto was trying to summon a fox for an hour now and Q was getting frustrated. Why can't he summon? She thought as an idea came to her. Hold up Naruto, I have a better plan. She told him as she got up and walked towards him. Q bit her thumb to draw blood and did the hand signs summoning jutsu. She yelled as she slammed her palm on the ground. Poof. Naruto was anxious and waited till the smoke to clear. Stand where Q had summoned was a white fox. What pathetic human dares and summon me? The fox yelled and let out as much ki as she could. Q growled as she looked at Yukari. You dare to speak to your queen with such disrespect? ? Yukari looked at the red head and started to sweat. My apologizes, my highness. I didn't realize that you're the one that summoned me. It's been over a millennium that any summoned creature seen or sense you. Yukari said as she bowed to her queen. Naruto walked up next to Q and whispered in her ear, Hey Q-chan, who is this and will she be my summoned fox? Q was so mad at Yukari for speaking to her like she did that she forgot about Naruto. Q shook her head at Naruto's question. She might, unable to tell, she has to accept you in order for you to summon a noble fox like her. You can raise Yukari. I will excuse you for today cause it's been ages since you saw me. But on a side note, I need you to open the portal so I can take Naruto here and the kids to train. Yukari stood up and drew a large seal on the ground big enough for everybody to fit on. It's done, Q-sama. Please step inside the circle. Q took Naruto's hand as they walked onto the drawn seal. Q could feel that Naruto was nervous, so she squeezed his hand and reaffirmed him that everything was going to be fine. Q nodded to Yukari that they were ready. Naruto watched as she transformed into a human. So can all foxes change into humans? Naruto asked as he watched Yukari go though hand signs demonic art, transport. Yukari yelled as the seal she drew started to glow red. Before Naruto got an answer, he was standing in a different area than before. Naruto arrived a different dimension that no mortal even knew existed besides Q herself. The land was as beautiful as one would dream of, the grass was as green as emeralds, the rivers shimmered, its sparkling waters free of any pollution of any kind. The forests were large and vast, filled with the most beautiful and exotic of foxes. Nature itself was a pure environment here, and Naruto could see that it was like an angelic paradise. Wow, so beautiful, said Naruto as he was in such awe at the sight of the unknown land. Yukari bowed and excused herself. If you don't need my assistance, I'll leave you too. I'm sure that you don't need my help, Your Highness. Q nodded to her as she vanished in a vortex of flames. So Q-chan, where are we? Naruto asked as he took in every detail. I had Yukari transport us to a very secret and well-hidden realm that every mortal believe is just a myth, she said as she breathed in the fresh air around her. Welcome Naru-kun to the Kitsun Springs, a place where everything is quiet and peaceful thanks to an old friend of mine centuries ago. Naruto smiled as he continued to follow Q to the location of his training. But why train me here? I thought no violence happens here like you said. That doesn't mean that evil hadn't tried to attack here before, plus time passes a lot slower here. Q answered. Besides, I'm taking you to meet my old clan and the council. Trust me Naru-kun, you'll like them. After a half-hour walk they came to a large tree located in the northern section near a large waterfall. Naruto was a little nervous at first, but Q placed her hand on his shoulder as she gave him a warm smile which Naruto returned. Moving slowly, Naruto entered the hollow entrance with Q behind him. They walked to a large staircase that led to the bottom floor, which was 20 floors down, which wasn't a problem Naruto since he was a stamina freak. Once they reached the bottom of the stairs they found a golden gate with carvings of foxes on each side of the doors. Where does this door lead, Q-chan? Naruto asked as he checked out the engravings. This door leads to my village and the training grounds of the Kitsuns. Q smirked as she seen the look Naruto gave her. Wait, what about the springs that are above us, and what do you mean time passes by slower? Q smiled at him. All your questions will be answered shortly, but first I will need to inform everyone that their queen has returned and then we can begin your training. Q said as she walked up to the door and channeled her chakra to open the door. The doors opened with a loud creak as a powerful wind blew over him. It felt like someone breathing down your neck, but Naruto didn't want to give in to fear as he walked through the gate. Upon entering, Naruto placed his hand on the wall closest to him as seals were applied to them, causing light to emit from them, lighting up the room. He gasped in awe at the majesty of the large valley. It was breathtaking as he took notice of a large village in the center. It was bigger than Konoha. Q led him down the stone steps that led down to the valley. Naruto followed as they arrived at the stone gate that was guarded by two women with fox-like features. One was a tall, muscled-like woman with an eye patch and scars that ran down her chest which were war wounds. The other was the same height but was dressed in a white battle kimono with metal armor chest plate. Halt, who goes there? One of the guards said as the other snarled. Colin, Miyuki, it's been centuries considering you foxes are immortal here. Q chuckled. The guards lowered their weapons as they were shocked that their queen had come back to them. Q-sama, you came back. Miyuki gave her a foxy grin. Yes, it's been ages, Q-chan, and I'm glad that you are safe. Colin laughed. Q smiled at her two favorite guards. I'm here with my mate Naruto to train him to be king. Q answered with a chuckle. The women noticed the blonde-hair boy with whisker marks and blue eyes. The women couldn't help but noticed how cute he was. He was a male blonde-head version of their queen. Miyuki knelt down to the boy's level and extended her hand to him. Hello Naruto, my name is Miyuki and this muscle-head is Colin. Miyuki introduced themselves to the boy. Naruto reached out carefully before shaking Miyuki's hand. Hi Miyuki, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, it's nice to meet you. Naruto said nervously. You're really pretty. Miyuki laughed. Ooh, aren't you quite the little charmer? Naruto blushed a little in embarrassment at the compliment as he let out a small fox-like smile. Q changed back into her fox form. If you're done flirting with my Naru-kun, I would like enter and address the village of my return. Q said with a soft growl to her voice as she watched the two guards flirt with Naruto. Alright Q-sama, no need to get upset, we were just playing with the new king-to-be. Colin said as she turned around and went through the necessary hand seals to open the village's force field, allowing them access. A large opening appeared before Naruto as he followed Q through the village. Q-chan, everybody is staring at me. Naruto said to the red fox that was in front of him. Don't worry Naru-kun, they'll all understand by the end of the day who you are. Q replied as she led him to the palace. Council room. Don't say anything unless I tell you, alright? Q whispered in his ear as they entered the council. The room was a semicircle with a main seat in the middle that sat the head advisor, a woman with platinum white hair that covered one of her navy blue eyes. The room was loud. Naruto saw many foxes arguing amongst the others. I'm sure that you all heard rumors of my return, and I'm here to ensure the people that their queen is alive and well. Q said as she stepped forward in front of the council. Q-sama, we all heard rumors that you were killed in battle, then none of the summons sensed your power for years, now you show up like nothing happened. Q stood silently in her royal robes as she looked at the council, trying to find a way to explain her disappearance. Well, you see that I went into hiding to find a suitable king, and if any of the other summons found out, I couldn't take that chance. Q told them as she motioned for Naruto to come to her. Naruto walked up to Q with Kaga and Shion sleeping comfortable inside of his shirt. The council started whispering among each other, then Mika spoke again. He's a human, no disrespect Q-sama, but they are the weakest and most destructive creatures. Q laughed at her. Yes, most are, but this one is different, and I personally picked him to be king, so gather the villagers so I can address them. Naruto's in Q's mansion. Q said as she grabbed Naruto's hand and exited the room. Naruto looked at Q with a worried look. Q-chan, what if they hate me like Konoha? You heard them in there and I know you felt it also, they hate me. He said as he checked up on his sleeping daughters. Q gave his hand a squeeze to reassure him that everything will work out. Don't worry Naru-kun, the village will love you and treat you so much better than you can imagine. So you don't have to worry about anyone here attacking you. Q finished as she stopped at their new living space. As they entered, Q led him toward a couch so she could explain more about the place they would be staying in. Okay Naru-kun, before I have to address the village, I thought that you would like to know more about this place. Naruto nodded as she continued on. Well, first things first, the place that we arrived at, Kitsun Springs, is a large place for the villagers to roam and feed their fox instincts, as you saw a few on the way here. The village is more for training and political meetings between all of the summons. It's a lot like how your Hokages operates. We have troops if the event rises that would call for it, but nothing has happened in a very long time. Naruto was trying to absorb the newly information that Q has told him. Q-chan, you said something about time moves slower here. Q wanted to smack herself for forgotten that. Yes, I did. You see, for every day that would pass in your world, 10 days would pass here. Naruto's eyes went wide. Why, you mean? Q smiled at him. Yes, the 3 hours that we have been here, only 18 minutes pass in your world. A knock was heard as Q got up and answered it. Yukari-san, what can I do for you? Yukari bowed. The villagers are waiting for you and their next king. Yukari informed as she left Q and the new king of the Kitsuns. Q shut the door and walked up to Naruto and grabbed his hand and lifted him to his feet. Are you ready to see your new kingdom, Naru-kun? Q asked as she wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug. Naruto smiled up at her and leaned up and licked her cheek. You bet, Q-chan. Palace balcony. Q stood with Naruto on her right and her advisors behind them. Q raised her hand to silence the crowd. As you are all aware, I have returned and I found us a king. Q got a loud cheer from the villagers. Q motioned for Naruto to come forward. This is Naruto, your new king. Naruto waved at the crowd of people. Ah, he's so cute. Naruto blushed at what most of the villagers say. Q smiled at Naruto as she saw how he reacted. Q-chan, what do I say, or do I say anything at all? Naruto asked as he leaned into Q. You can say anything that you want or don't say anything at all, it's whatever you feel like. Q replied as she took his hand. Naruto nodded as he stepped forward and the crowd quieted down as they saw their new king. I hope that you all accept me as your king. The villagers all yelled and cheered his name. We love you, Naru-chan. And we know that you will be great. Some of the villagers shouted, others just chanted his name. Naruto looked at Q and smiled. They actually like me and don't hate me, he said as he wiped a tear from his eye. Of course they do, Naru-kun, you're their king, plus you're so adorable. Q told him as she rubbed his head. An idea popped in his head as he pat his daughters to wake them up. Naruto handed Shion to Q as he held Kaga in his. Should we announce the princesses to their kingdom also? Q gave him a fox-like grin as she followed what Naruto wanted. There's one more thing that we wanted to announce to you all, as she and Naruto lifted the two kits up. This is Kaga and Shion, your princesses. The majority of the village cooed at the two little foxes that was held up before them. Naruto's and Q's mansion. Naruto smiled as they ate dinner in silence. What are you grinning about? Q asked as she gave Naruto a weird look. I'm just happy that I found a place that accepts me for who I am and I feel safe here. Naruto replied with a fox smile as he continued feeding Kaga, and Q feed Shion. Naruto and Q finished eating as he was about to clean up the dishes. Q giggled at Naruto, leave the dishes, we have servants that will clean, so don't worry. Naruto just nodded as he made his way towards the bathroom. Q slipped on her favorite silk nightgown. I missed you so much, she thought as she laid down on top of her bed. Naruto just finished brushing his teeth as he looked into the bathroom mirror. I'm sure Q won't mind if I dispel the henge, Naruto thought as he channeled chakra to the seal that had a fox holding up two fingers. There was a poof, and as the smoke cleared, there stood Naruto now with fox ears and a tail. Naruto exited the bathroom and walked into the bedroom. He saw Q spread out and purring. He saw that his daughters were having a hard time getting comfortable, so he picked them up one at a time and sat them on the bed. How about you guys sleep with your mother and I tonight, and tomorrow we'll get you two beds? Naruto whispered down at the two foxes as he laid down next to Q. The two foxes crawled up to him and Q and went to sleep almost immediately. Morning. Naruto opened his eyes to see Q and his daughters cuddled up against him. Naruto sat up, not waking up the others. Kaga woke up and looked up at him. Naruto saw that both of his kids awake. You guys hungry? He asked as Kaga skipped up to him and mewed as Shion shook her head as she nuzzled back into her mother. Naruto chuckled at her as he picked up Kaga. Alright, protect your mother, your sister and I are going to get some food, Naruto said as he kissed her on her head and licked Q's cheek and covered her up with the blanket. Naruto walked towards the kitchen with Kaga in his arms. As Naruto entered, he saw multiple maids cooking and washing dishes. Oh, good morning Naruto-sama, Kaga-sama, how can we help you? One of the maids asked as they all lined up and bowed. Naruto felt uncomfortable at how he was being treated. Just call me Naruto, you don't need the formalities. I was wondering if I could get some milk for Kaga-hime, Naruto said as he scratched Kaga's ear. One of the maids went to the refrigerator and poured some milk into a bottle and gave it to Naruto. Would you like anything to eat, Naruto? The maid said as she gave him the bottle. Yay, if it's not too much trouble, he said as he walked out of the kitchen with Kaga. Naruto headed to the living room and sat down in front of a large television. I wonder what kind of shows they have here, he thought as he turned the television on. Naruto flipped through the channels to find out they had all of the channels that his world had, plus some he never heard of. He found some cartoons to watch as he cradled Kaga and feed her. Naruto chuckled. You just like being pampered, don't you? He said as he placed the empty bottle down to get a happy yip from Kaga. A maid appeared before Naruto. Naruto, breakfast is ready. She bowed and led him towards the dining room. Naruto sat down in front of a big table that was loaded with food. I should go wake Q-chan up, Naruto thought out loud, only to get a few chuckles from the maids. Naruto looked up at them with a curious look. What? Did I say something weird? One of the maids stepped forwards. Not at all, Naruto, it's just that Q-sama doesn't get up till noon, she said as she stepped back in line with the other two. Naruto sat down and was about to eat until he noticed that the maids were still standing. I'm new to maids, but why are you all standing? Am I supposed to dismiss you? The maids chuckled once again. No, Naruto, we're waiting till you're finished eating and we will clean up, she said as she stepped back with the other two. What are your names? Naruto asked as he looked at the three maids. A maid with long, strawberry blonde hair and green eyes stepped forward. My name is Yui and it's a pleasure to meet you, Yui said as she bowed. The next maid stepped up to introduce herself to Naruto. She had short whitish blue hair and ember-colored eyes. Nice to meet you. My name is Shirayasha, but you can call me Shiro. The last maid had light brown hair and dark brown eyes. I'm Maka and it's a pleasure to meet you. Naruto smiled at the three maids. It's nice to meet you all, and why don't you sit down and eat with me? I won't be able to eat all of the food that you have prepared. Yui looked at Naruto. The servants aren't allowed to eat with the higher class. She finished looking sad. Naruto noticed that they all looked down, then an idea came to him. Well, as your king, I order that you three sit down and eat with me, Naruto told the maids with a fox grin. The three maids' faces lit up as they slowly sat down at the table around Naruto. Naruto conversed with the three maids as they ate. He got to know them more and what Kitsun Springs is like. Naruto finished eating as he picked Kaga up. I guess that we need to wash up, you got syrup all over you. Naruto laughed. Yui looked at Naruto as she handed Maka a dirty dish. Would master require assistance? Naruto's face went bright red. Why you asking to bath me? He was able to stammer out. Yui looked at him confused. Why yes, Naruto, it's one of our duties as servants, so let's get you two washed up, Yui said as she dragged Naruto to the bathroom by his hand. As they entered the bathroom, Yui went up to a wall and unsealed towels, then she did a hand sign. A cloud of smoke covered her. She emerged wearing a bathing suit as she handed Naruto a towel. You can cover up with this and you can put your dirty clothes over there, Yui said as she took Kaga from him and entered the shower. Naruto stood there with a red face. She doesn't really intend to wash me, is she? Naruto was broken out of his thoughts when he heard Yui calling him. Naruto hurried and discarded his clothes and wrapped the towel that Yui gave him around his waist and entered the shower. 5 minutes later, Q stretched as she got up out of bed as she growled in disapproval. He. I know Shiheim, I don't want to get up either, but we need to start. Naru-kun, Kagaheim, and your training today, Q said as she picked up the small black fox and made her way towards the bathroom. As Q entered the bathroom, she instantly saw red. In front of her was Naruto with one of the maids. Yui and Naruto both felt the key directed at them. Naruto and Yui turned their heads to look at Q. It's not what it looks like, Q-chan. Yui is just helping me wash Kaga, Naruto said as he waved his hands in defense. Q narrowed her eyes at Yui. Then tell me, why does that hussy have her hands on your privates? Naruto looked down to see that Yui was still washing him. She said that it was one of their duties as a maid, to tend to their master's needs. There was an awkward silence as Naruto stood up and was about to leave until Q grabbed his arm. You are right, Naru-kun, but I think that Yui-chan took her responsibilities a little too far, Q finished as she looked at Yui. Damn, I was hoping that Q-sama would sleep a little longer. I haven't got to play with it as long as I wanted to, Yui thought as looked away with red cheeks. Q dragged Naruto back into the bath with her and the two smaller foxes. Yui got up and bowed. Do you need any more assistance, my lady? Q shook her head, and before Yui exited the bathroom, Q spoke. I will discuss your punishment later, Yui-chan. A shiver went down Yui's spine as she nodded. Oh, of course, Q-sama. Yui turned and exited the room. Yui hurried and changed to tell the other girls about her time with Naruto. Naruto sat in his and Q's personal hot spring. Q finished washing Shion and herself as she entered the water and sat next to Naruto. Naruto looked down at the water. It looks like I made Q-chan mad. I hope that I didn't get Yui into trouble. Naruto thought as he twiddled his fingers under the water. Q opened one of her eyes to look at Naruto as she felt all of the emotions that he was putting out. Did Yui-chan do anything that you asked her not to do? Q asked as she closed her eye, trying to piece together a nice punishment for the blonde-haired fox. Naruto's eyes went wide as his head snapped to look at Q. No, she said that it was a part of her duties, so I went along with it, so please don't punish her, it was also my fault. Q smiled as she grabbed Naruto and sat him in between her legs. Don't worry Naru-kun, I won't hurt her, but I still have to punish her for overstepping her boundaries. Q said as she wrapped her arms around Naruto's waist. Naruto watched as his daughters swam in the water. He leaned back and rested his head on Q's chest. So are you ready to start training today, Naru-kun? Q asked as watched the two foxes get out of the water and shake to dry themselves off. Naruto noticed that they had enough, so he got out and looked over his shoulder. You bet Q-chan, I can't wait to see how strong that me and our daughters will become, so come on, you slept most of the day. Q blushed as she saw Naruto hand her a towel. Training ground. Naruto finished stretching as he saw Q talking to 4 other foxes. Naruto walked up to them. Hey Q-chan, I finished my warm-up, can we start now? He asked, hoping that he would learn a cool new jutsu. Yes Naru-kun, I just finished going over the plans with your personal guards. Q said as she looked at Naruto. I know that you know the shadow clone jutsu, and we're going to use that to improve your skills. She finished as she noticed that Naruto looked down. She lifted his chin so that he was looking at her. You don't have to feel ashamed about your exams, that pitiful teacher of yours sabotaged it, making you fail on purpose. Naruto smiled at her. Thanks Q-chan. Naruto said as he licked her cheek. Alright Naruto, I want you to meet your personal guard and trainers. Q said as the 4 ladies stepped in line. The first one was a small girl with auburn hair and light blue eyes. Hello Naruto-sama, my name is Rina and I'm going to train you in ninjutsu and improve your chakra control. Rina said as she took a step back in line. Naruto smiled and waved. Please, no formalities, just Naruto. He said as he saw the next girl step forward. This one had light blue hair and violet eyes. Hello Naruto, my name is Miyaku and I'm going to teach you taijutsu and stealth. The next fox had light green hair and matching eyes. Hi, my name is Tamaki and you're going to learn genjutsu and sensory from me. Finally, the last female walked forward. She had gray hair and dark blue eyes. It's a pleasure to meet you Naruto, my name is Kana and I'm going to teach you our style of kenjutsu and fuinjutsu. Q walked up and placed her hand on Naruto's shoulder. Alright Naru-kun, I want you to make 2,000 clones and have them split into groups of 500. Naruto looked her like she was crazy. I can't make that many. Q laughed at him. Of course you can, you need to channel my chakra, and when you make the shadow clones you just need to think of the number that you wish to make, so hurry up. She said as she took a few steps back. Naruto started to channel Q's chakra and Q watched as her red chakra started to envelope Naruto. Naruto opened his eyes and crossed his fingers and thought of the number that Q wanted him to make Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. And standing before him was 2,000 clones. Q clapped as she hugged Naruto. I knew that you could do it. Alright, I want each group to go to one of your teachers. We will do this every day except Sunday. Instead of training, I want you to study the clan laws and rules. Naruto did as she said and noticed that he was left with Q as each of the girls took their groups to different training grounds. Alright Naru-kun, I want you to run 150 times around the village followed by 2,000 push-ups and 2,000 sit-ups. Q said as she started to walk off with their 2 daughters. Hey Q-chan, why can't I have my clones do it instead? He asked with a puzzled look. Q smiled as she replied, cause Naru-kun clones only can transfer their memories and chakra-based techniques they learn. Naruto nodded as he understood what she was saying. What are you going to do while I train? Q smiled as she picked up the 2 little foxes. Well, I'm going to train our daughters on how to speak and use chakra. Kyu told him as she walked away with the foxes in her arms. Naruto chuckled. Well, I guess I better get going or I be out here all night. Naruto muttered to himself as he started to run. Dinner. Naruto sat down at the table and looked down at his two daughters playing. Did you two learn a lot today with your mother? He asked as he got a few happy yips from the foxes. Kyu walked into the room and looked down at her daughters. Well, show your father what you two learned today. Kaga jumped up onto Naruto's lap and opened her mouth. Naruto raised one of his eyes. What is it, Kaga-hime? Kaga opened her mouth again and a small squeak came out as she started to give up. You can do it, Kaga, I believe that you can, just do as we practiced earlier. Kyu told her daughter. Kaga smiled as she looked back at Naruto. Da. Daddy. Kaga was able to say as she smiled at Naruto. That was amazing, Kaga. Naruto told her as he picked her up and licked her cheek. Kaga let out a small purr. Daddy, she said again and she returned licked Naruto's cheek. Naruto sat her back down and picked her sister up. So Shion-hime, what did you learn today? Naruto asked as he scratched her ear. Shion purred and looked up at her father. Daddy. And she looked back at Kyu. Mommy. Naruto smiled. That's amazing, Shion-hime, and he licked her cheek as well. Kyu was a little surprised that Shion learned how to say mommy since they only practiced saying daddy today. Shion jumped down and ran up to Kyu and jumped into her arms as Kaga did the same to Naruto. After Maka and the others brought out the food and plates, she and the others sat down next to Naruto. Kyu let out a loud growl. What do you three think that you're doing? She finished saying as she let out enough ki to frighten them. They were shaking with fear as Shiro spoke up. Lady Kyu, Naruto has ordered us to eat with him. We informed him that the servants and nobles don't eat together, but he insisted that we ate with him. She and the others got up and bowed, but before they could leave, Naruto spoke up. Wait, you three will always have a place at the table with us, so please come and eat. Naruto finished as he gave Kyu a look. Fine, they can eat with us, but you three better not overstep your boundaries. Kyu said as she held her hand out, telling them to sit and eat. Yes, Kyu-sama. They all said at the same time. Dinner was full of talk as Naruto told Kyu and the others what he learned with his new senseis. He told Kyu that he was having a hard time getting the basic stance for the Kenjutsu and Taijutsu that he was trying to learn. Well, I'm not surprised, the fox style is hard to grasp. Kyu said as she took another bite of her meal. Yay, I hope that I will get better at it tomorrow, but my fuinjutsu and ninjutsu are really easy to learn, he said as he placed more food onto Kaga's plate. That's not really surprising since how big your chakra reserves are, and learning fuinjutsu is easy cause of the Uzumaki genes in you. You see, the Uzumakis were masters at fuinjutsu and some say that they're geniuses at the art. That took Naruto by surprise. Dinner ended and Naruto took Kaga and Shion to relax and watch a movie before bed. Where are you going, Kyu-chan? Don't you want to watch the movie with us? Naruto asked as he seen Kyu walk towards the kitchen. Not tonight, Naru-kun, I have to deal with Yui-chan, remember, and don't worry, I won't hurt her. Kyu said as she continued to the kitchen. The maids were busy cleaning the dishes as Kyu entered. Oh gee, good evening, Kyu-sama, what can I do for you? Maka said as she bowed to Kyu. I'm here to get Yui-chan, so Yui-chan please come with me. Kyu finished as she walked out of the kitchen with Yui following close behind. Kyu thrust her tongue into Yui as she released the seal that she had placed. Just as Kyu removed, the maid finally came. Yui climaxed for a solid minute as Kyu greedily slurped the blonde's cum, lapping it out of her, moaning herself as if it were the finest wine. Now that's settled, you're going to mine and Naru-kun's personal toy as well as our maid. Kyu told the maid as she untied her. Also, you are not allowed to speak of this to anyone other than myself and Naru-kun and clean this mess up. Kyu said as she got a grunt from the half-conscious maid. Kyu left the room and went to take a quick shower before bed. As Kyu entered the bedroom, she noticed that Naruto and the girls were already asleep. Kyu smiled as she saw the two little foxes curled up to their father for warmth. Kyu carefully crawled in the bed and scooted near Naruto. Shion woke up from her mother's movement. She walked over and curled up on Kyu's chest and went back to sleep. Naruto pulled Kyu closer to him and purred against her neck. It has been 3 months since Naruto came to Kitsun Springs to train, and like every other day he woke up next to Kyu. Naruto turned to watch Kyu sleep as he slowly got out of bed and grabbed Kaga and made their way towards the kitchen. Naruto looked down at Kaga and smiled. Let's see what the girls made for breakfast. And Kaga jumped out of his arms and poofed. Now standing was a 12-year-old girl. I can't wait, I'm so hungry. Kaga told her father as she grabbed his hand and dragged him towards the kitchen faster. Naruto sat at the table with Kaga on his lap. Shiro brought out the remaining of the food as she and the 2 other maids sat down with Naruto. Naruto noticed that the past few months Yui became more distant towards him and he thought that she hated him from aspired in the bathroom. Maka seen this and decided to break the tension. So Naruto-kun, are you excited for your coronation today? She asked as she ate her food. Naruto looked up at her. Yeah, I'm just hope that the leaders from the other kingdoms accepts me. Naruto said as he cut Kaga's pancakes. Kaga looked up at her father. I'm sure that they will, because you're the strongest king alive. Naruto smiled at her then chuckled as she had syrup all over her. Naruto and Kaga just finished eating when Kyu walked into the dining room. Morning Naru-kun, Kaga-hime. Kyu said as she sat down with Shion to eat. You're up early Kyu-chan, did you sleep well? Naruto asked as he watched her take a sit and Shion sat on her lap. Shion yawned as she helped her mother put food on a plate for the both of them. Yes, I did Naru-kun, I hope that you're ready for today. Kyu finished as she started to eat. This time Kaga spoke up. Daddy is afraid that the leaders will hate him. Naruto bit her ear. Hey, I never said that I was afraid, I said that I hope that they will accept me like everyone here in the village did. Kaga pouted as she rubbed her ear where Naruto bit. Kyu giggled at the interaction between Naruto and Kaga. Don't worry so much about it, I doubt that they will dislike you. She stated as she feed Shion. So are you two excited for today? Naruto asked his 2 daughters. Both Shion and Kaga made a thinking pose. What do you mean, Daddy? Shion asked as Kaga looked like she was still thinking. Well, today is a big day for all of us, you two might meet princesses and princes from the other villages. Naruto finished as he noticed Kaga still in a thinking pose. Are you alright Kaga-hime? He asked worriedly. He, my hand is stuck to my face. Naruto and the others' sweat dropped at her statement. To what you had asked Daddy, I am excited, I get to wear my fancy kimono that Ka-san and I picked out. Shion said. Naruto smiled at her and looked down at his sticky daughter. What about you Kaga-hime? Kaga looked up and smiled. Of course I'm excited, I might make a few new friends. She finished as she wagged her tail. Naruto stood up and smiled. I hope that both of you two make friends with the leader's children if they have any. But we need to get you cleaned up, Ms. Sticky. He said as he picked Kaga up. Shion ran up and took his hand. He turned his head to look at Yui. Hey Yui-chan, I need help cleaning the girls. He said as Kyu gave her a discreet nod. Why yes, and Naruto, I'm right behind you. Yui said as she walked over to Naruto. Bathroom. Naruto noticed that after Kyu disciplined her that Yui she wouldn't offer to help wash him or the girls if she wasn't ordered to. They entered the bathroom and Naruto gave Kaga to Yui so he could change. After he got undressed he walked in the shower area with the others. Naruto washed himself as he watched Yui wash Kaga and Shion. Naruto decided to confront Yui. Hey Yui-chan, did I do something to you? I mean the last few months you seem to avoid being around me. Naruto asked as Yui stopped washing Kaga's back. No Naruto, I overstepped my boundaries as a maid and Kyu-sama reminded me where I belong. Yui said with a slight blush as she remembered the night that Kyu punished her. Naruto growled as he got up and made his way towards the hot spring. Both Kaga and Shion's ears lowered as they felt their father's ki. Daddy's upset. Shion whimpered as she looked over towards her sister. Why yay but why? Yui heard them and instantly started to sweat. I hope that Q-sama don't take it out on me. Yui thought as she rinsed the two princesses off. As she finished, Q walked in. I just finished washing your daughters. Yui said as she bowed to Q. That's good, I take it that Naru-kun is in the springs already. Before Kaga entered the hot springs, she answered her mother before Yui could. Yes, daddy is already in there and he's upset. I don't know about what though. Kaga said as she hurried up and ran into the springs. Q watched as both of her children headed towards the springs. Yui-chan, I need to be washed. Q stated as Yui turned around and bowed. Of course, Q-sama. Yui said as she started to wash Q. Do you know why Naruto is upset, Yui-chan? Q asked as she turned her head to look at Yui. Why yes, Q-sama. Naruto noticed that I was distancing myself from him and I told him that I overstepped my boundaries as a maiden that you had to remind me. Yui told Q nervously as she finished rinsing her off. I figured that something like this might happen. Q said as walked towards the springs. You're dismissed, Yui-chan. Yui bowed and left. As Q entered the springs, she saw that both of her daughters were relaxing on one side of the spring and Naruto sat on the other. The closer Q got to Naruto, the more she felt his negative emotions. Naru-kun, what's wrong? Q asked like she didn't have a clue. Q finally sat next to Naruto and heard him growled and scoot away from her. You promised that you weren't going to hurt Yui-chan and now she doesn't even want to be in the same room as me unless I give her an order. Naruto said with his eyes shut, feeling Q trying to get closer. Naruto, you have to realize that here in this world you're more than a king to them, and some like Yui-chan will overstep and try to take advantage of you. Naruto opened his eyes to look at Q, his normal blue eyes now red and leaking a large amount of ki. That may be so, but you didn't have to do whatever you did to her. Naruto yelled at Q as she grabbed him and placed him on her lap. I know that you're mad, but you need to calm down, Naru-kun, you're scaring our daughters. Q said as she rested her head on his shoulder. Naruto looked up at the two little foxes that were shaking in the corner of the hot spring. Naruto growled as he pushed himself off of Q. Sorry about that, Daddy's sorry for scaring you. He told the two as he sat between them. Kaga and Shion leaned on him as they relaxed. It's alright, Daddy, we know that you didn't mean to scare us. Kaga told him as she closed her eyes. Yay, but still my actions caused others to get hurt. Naruto finished as he gave Q a cold look. Naruto's dressing room. Wow, Naruto-kun, you look so handsome. Both Maka and Shiro both cooed. Thanks, you too, I needed that. Q and I had an argument and I kind of don't want to do this, but this is what the king does, right? Naruto responded as he looked at himself in the mirror. Not to be nosy, but what are you two fighting about? Shiro asked as she straightened his royal robes. Well, it's about Yui and how she punished her. He said as he remembered what Q told him in the hot springs. We understand, Naruto. You're ready to meet the leaders and we made yours and Q-sama's robes match, so if you excuse us we will go and get Kaga-sama and Shion-sama ready. Naruto nodded as he looked at the red robe that had a pair of gold foxes on the back. Yes, that will be all. Naruto said as the two maids left the room. Naruto let out a sigh. I can't wait till this day is over with. I hope that nothing will go wrong at the meeting. Naruto thought as he sat down by a window. Maka and Shiro walked in the room with Q and Yui. Q-sama, Naruto is all dressed and we're ready for Kaga and Shion. Maka told her queen. Alright, thanks, my two daughters are waiting in the next room, by any chance? Naruto cheered up. Q asked her maids as they shook their heads no and made their way towards the other room. Q looked down as Yui tried to cheer her up. Don't worry, Q-sama, I'm sure that Naruto will do fine. Yui told her. I know he will do great, but he's upset with me, not worried about today. Q stated as Yui nodded. Well, since I'm done with your robes, why don't you go and talk to him? Yui told her with a warm smile. I don't think he wants to talk to me right now. You should have seen the way he acted towards me in the hot springs. She told the maid as she made her way toward her daughter's changing room. As Q and Yui entered the room, they saw Xian standing still for Maka as she dressed her. Then Q covered her mouth as she let out a small chuckle when she saw her other daughter. Come on Kaga-sama, I know that you don't like it, but you need to hold still. Shiro pleaded as she tried to dress the other child. Hi Ka-san, where's daddy? Xian asked her mother, and that got Kaga's attention. Q took a sit in front of them as Naruto walked in. Wow, don't my girls look lovely? He said as he sat next to Q. Do I have to wear this, daddy? Kaga asked, desperately trying to get out of dressing up. Naruto smiled as he walked up to Kaga and licked her cheek. Well, I would like my beautiful daughters to look nice, plus I don't like wearing fancy clothes either, so can you hold still for me so Shiro can finish? He said as he enveloped Kaga in a hug. Sure thing daddy, I will. Kaga said as she returned the hug. Meeting room. Naruto, Q and their daughters waited in the room as they waited for the leaders to arrive. One by one the leaders of the different villages arrived. Naruto sat at the head of the room and waited for all 14 leaders to arrive. One by one they arrived and took their seats along each side of the room. Q leaned in and whispered that everyone has arrived. All right, since everyone has made it, let's start this meeting. Naruto said as he looked around the room. First state who you are and your summoners if you have any. He said as he motioned for the first person on his right to start. The first was a silver-haired man. Hello, my name is Soda K and I'm the leader of the wolves and we do not have any summoners yet. Soda said as he bowed to Naruto and Q. Naruto nodded as he looked for the next person. Hello Naruto-sama, my name is Kamatari and I'm the leader of the weasels, and currently Tamari holds our contract and she lives in Suna. The white-haired woman said and bowed. The next was a tall monkey that spoke. It's nice to meet you Naruto-sama. Q-sama, my name is Emma and I'm the leader of the monkeys. The Sarutobi family holds my contract and they live in Konoha. Emma stated as he finished. Naruto smiled. Yes, I know the old man well. Naruto told the monkey. Emma gave him a puzzled look. Old man? He asked. Naruto chuckled as he scratched the back of his head. I'm sorry, you know him as Hiruzen Sarutobi, but I call him Gigi, an old man. Naruto finished. Oh, you're Naruto that he has been looking for. Q spoke up this time. Yes, but we would gladly appreciate it that you keep his location private. Q finished as she gave Emma a look that he better not test her. Next up was a brown-haired woman with gray eyes. Hello my lord, my name is Yagi Tokiko and I'm the leader of the owls, and currently Kumo holds my contract. She said as Naruto gave her a questionable look. What do you mean? Does everyone in Kumo summons you? Yagi giggled. No Naruto-sama, anyone that proves themselves worthy by the regimen summon us and we put them through a series of tests. Naruto nodded in understanding as he motioned for the next to introduce themselves. The next leader approached Naruto and Q. He had short brown shaggy hair and dark brown circles around his eyes. Hello my lord and queen, my name is Pakun and I'm the leader of the dogs and currently we have one summoner in Konoha. You might know him also, his name is Kakashi Hatake. Naruto shook his head. No. Doesn't ring a bell, sorry. Naruto replied politely. Naruto was down to the last 4 leaders and watched as a female approached him. The black-haired black-eyed woman came forward. My name is Ordinary Ako and I'm the leader of the crows and we're personal summon contract for the Uchihas. Ordinary said, which got Naruto's attention. Do you know Izumi Uchiha? He asked as Q gave him a glare. Why yes my lord, she recently signed our contract. Do you know her? She asked as Naruto nodded. Yay, she was one of my special people and I would greatly appreciate that you tell her that I'm safe but don't tell her where I am. Ordinary nodded as she went back to her seat. The next 3 approached Naruto and the first one on the left introduced himself. Hello, my name is Gamabunta and Jiraiya, one of the 3 Sannin, is my summoner. Naruto let out a small growl towards the toad-like man for mentioning his godfather's name. Is there something that I said, my lord? Naruto shook his head. No, sorry, it's just that Jiraiya abandoned me and I had to endure a lot. Let's just say he's not one of my favorite people. He finished as he looked at the next person. Next was a beautiful woman with solid white hair and green eyes. She wore a light blue kimono. It's nice to meet you. My name is Katsuyu and I'm the leader of the slugs and Tsunade Senju holds our summoning contract. Katsuyu finished as she brought forward a younger looking girl. And this is Kuroki, my daughter, and I offer her hand in marriage as a bond between the slugs and foxes. The room was in uproar as Naruto leaned over towards Q. Does this thing supposed to happen? He asked as Q gave him a nod. Yeah, I'm surprised that none of the other summons didn't try it, and it looks like the snakes are going to offer the same deal, so I would take their deal. Naruto's eyes went wide. If you think it's the right choice, I'll do it. He responded back to a smiling Q. Next, a tall man with dark purple hair and yellow snake eyes stepped forward and bowed. Good day, my lord, I'm Manda, the leader of the snakes. He finished as he brought his daughter forward. This is my daughter Naya and I offer the same deal as the slugs. Naruto looked at Manda's daughter. She had white hair with pink highlights and gold-colored eyes just like her father. Naya wore a white kimono with pink snakes on it. She and Kuroki were definitely beautiful. Naruto looked at the three of them. I will accept both of your daughters. Naruto said as he walked towards them. Naya and Kuroki both blushed as he approached them. Only if they are willing to. I don't want to force them. He finished as he took and kissed both of their hands. Naya blushed as she kissed Naruto's cheek. I accept, plus I don't mind being engaged to a handsome fox. She said as she giggled. What about you, Kuroki-chan? Naruto asked Katsuyu's daughter. Kuroki looked up at her smiling mother. Yay, I will give it a try. She replied softly as she looked back at Naruto. Naruto's face lit up as he licked her cheek as he heard a faint growl. Was that Q-chan? And if so, why would she be upset? She's the one that suggested the idea. Naruto thought as he led her and Naya up next to Q. Alright, since we got the introductions out of the way, is there any issues that needs to be resolved? Naruto asked as he got negative nods from the different leaders. Yui came in and whispered into Naruto's ear. He gave everybody a fox-like grin. Good, the feast is ready. He announced as he directed everyone to the dining hall. Dining room. Naruto sat down at the head of the table with Naya and Kuroki on each side of him. Q sat at the opposite end with Kaga and Shion on each side of her. As the leaders took their seats, Maka and the others brought out the food and sat in front of them. Naruto-kun, what would you like to drink? Shiro asked, but before he could respond he heard one of the leaders mutter, HMPH, what kind of king lets his servants talk to him in such of a manner? Q saw the look in Naruto's eyes and quickly grabbed her daughter's hands and cloaked them in her chakra. Yui-chan, Maka-chan, grab my shoulders. Q ordered the two maids quietly. Shiro, grab my shoulder. Naruto ordered as he took both Naya's and Kuroki's hands. Before any of the leaders could question him, they all were gasping for air as Naruto unleashed ungodly amount of ki towards them. I treat my servants as equals and they do their jobs and chores as maids, but do not question my ability as a king. Naruto added more ki as he watched the leaders cower in fear. Why yes, and Naruto-sama. He heard a few leaders say as he clapped his hands. Good, now let's eat. He said as he stopped releasing ki. Sorry about that. I hope that I didn't scare you too. Naruto said just loud enough for the two princesses to hear. Naya's heart was pounding in her chest. Wow, so much ki and he's a hunk, yay me. Naya thought as she started to drool. It's alright, Naruto-kun, I would have done the same. Kuroki said and blushed at the thought of him being kind to everyone. Manda laughed. Well, I don't have to worry about my daughter's safety as she'll have someone like you to protect her. He finished as Katsuyu agreed with him. Naruto gave Manda a suspicious look. Why would you worry about her safety when she'll be with me? He asked as he saw Manda start to sweat. I didn't mean anything by it, Naruto-sama. It's just that not everyone here gets along with everyone. He finished as he watched Naruto go in a thinking pose. I asked if there were any issues earlier, why didn't anyone bring it up? Naruto asked the snake leader. This time Katsuyu spoke up. Well, maybe because we all came to meet the new king, not to resolve any issues that we have. On the other side of the table, Q was having issues of her own. Why does daddy have to marry those two? Kaga asked as she let out a small growl. It's to secure alliances with the snakes and slugs. Q said to her daughter. Kaga let out a sad sigh. I didn't get to sit by him, she said as her eyes started to water. Q sighed. Kids. Then an evil idea popped into her head to get Naruto back for unloading both of their children on her. Why don't you go down there? Q asked her. Well, because there's not room for me, and what if he gets angry at me? Kaga asked as she looked at her mother. I'm sure he won't get mad, plus I'm going to tell him that you'll be coming down there. Q said as she channeled chakra to open the mind link. Naruto, can you hear me? I haven't used this way to talk to you in a while. Naruto looked up at Q. Yay, what's wrong? He asked, worried that the leaders were giving her a hard time. Everything is going fine, it's just that your daughter is upset that she couldn't eat with her father. Naruto chuckled as Manda and Katsuyu gave him a weird look. That's fine, send her down. Q smiled at her daughter. He said he doesn't mind WH. Q didn't finish her sentence before her daughter raced down to her father. Is everything alright, Naruto-sama? Katsuyu asked as Naruto smiled at her. Yes, everything is fine, we're going to have some extra company. Naruto finished as he waved Maka over and whispered in her ear. Maka returned with an extra placement as Naruto pulled his chair out to make room for his daughter. Before Katsuyu asked who would be joining them, a small girl with a matching set of clothes as Naruto came up. Naruto smiled at Kaga as he picked her up and sat her on his lap. You look beautiful, Kaga-hime. Naruto said as he licked her cheek. Kaga blushed. Thank you, daddy. Kaga said nervously as she looked at the newly added company. Katsuyu, Manda, I would like to introduce my daughter Kaga. Naya choked on her drink. Daughter? Naya asked with big eyes, not believing what she'd heard. Yes, my daughter. Is there something wrong? Naruto asked as he turned his head to look Naya in the eyes. No, I didn't know you had a kid. Naya said as she blushed, as Naruto started to laugh at her. Did I say something wrong? Naya asked as she started to get mad at Naruto for laughing at her. I apologize, Naya-chan, I didn't mean to laugh at you, it's just that I have two children. Shion-hime prefers her mother and Kaga-hime is a big daddy's girl. Naya nodded as she went back to her meal. Naruto turned towards Kuroki and smiled as she was currently talking and making Kaga laugh. You don't have an issue with me having two kids, do you, Kuroki-chan? Kuroki shook her head no as she went back to talking to Kaga. I think you spoil her and that's why she likes you, she knows that she can get away with anything around you. Naya stated as she didn't care for how the princess acted. Manda's sweat dropped at what his daughter just said to the king. Naruto leaned over towards Naya. I treat both of my daughters the same way, just wait, after a few days here you will see that it's different. Naruto said, inching closer and closer to Naya. Is he going to kiss me? Naya thought as she watched him close the distance between them. Maybe B, but I don't think that's how a princess should act. Naruto just smiled at her and licked her cheek again. He heard a growl and saw that Kaga was scowling at her. Naya smirked at Kaga and decided to have some fun with her. As Naruto started to back away from Naya, she reached out and grabbed him. She leaned forward and kissed Naruto. Naruto's eyes went wide for a second from the boldness that Naya was displaying. Naya bit Naruto's lip and drew blood. She wanted to deepen the kiss, but Naruto ended the kiss before it went too far. That was nice, Naru-kun, I was wondering when you would kiss me. Naya said as she cleaned Naruto's blood off of her lips and settled back down in her seat. That's when she heard Kaga growl once again. Naruto heard Kaga growl and nip her ear. Kaga let out a small yip and knew it was her father's way of telling her to behave. Well, Naya-chan, they way foxes kiss as we lick each other's cheeks. Naruto told her as both Naya's and Kuroki blushed, realizing that Naruto had actually kissed them multiple times, but in his own way. Did I offend you by kissing you that way? Naya asked as she looked down embarrassed. Naruto laughed. You could never offend me, Naya-chan, plus I knew that's how snakes kiss. He finished as Kuroki pulled him towards her and stuck her tongue in his mouth and continued to kiss him. Kuroki pulled away and whispered in his ear. Thank you for my kiss as well. Naruto smiled as he whispered back, well, if you wanted to taste me, all you had to do is ask Kuro-chan. Naruto purred her name as he watched her sit back down with a massive blush. Manda and Katsuyu both laughed as they watched their daughter's behavior. So Manda-san, back to what you and Katsuyu-chan were saying earlier, who exactly don't get along? Naruto asked as Katsuyu blushed at the suffix he used for her. Well, for starters, Naru-kun, Manda here don't get along with Gamabunta. Manda just huffed as he started to mutter something that Naruto didn't quite hear him. I usually play middleman between the two so things don't get out of hand. She continued. Manda spoke up this time. The leaders of Hawk, Owl, and Crow argues over who's the best when it comes to flying. Naruto nodded as that wasn't too bad. And of course Pakun likes to instigate Mitsugu-chan, but they get along. Naruto chuckled. Imagine that the leader of the dogs and the leader of the cats getting along. Katsuyu thought for a little bit. Oh, Sekaguchi-chan, Doi-kun, and Gamabunta likes to fight to see who's the better water creature. Naruto asked quietly, only for the three to hear. Which one is Sekaguchi and Doi again? Feeling embarrassed that he forgot already. Well, Seiki-chan is the blue-skinned woman and the redhead next to her is Doi-kun. Katsuyu replied as Naruto looked at the leaders of the sharks and turtles. At the other end of the table, Q was talking with Mitsugu and Soda. Soda narrowed his eyes at Naruto. I can't believe that you rather have a human as a mate. How many years have I asked you out and you turned me down for one of them? Soda said with a deep growl. Q didn't like how Soda was talking about her Naru-kun. Believe me, Soda-kun, that Naruto is more powerful and excels in different areas than you. Q said, smirking as she poked at Soda's pride. Calm down, Soda. You know that Q-san likes to rile you up. Mitsugu said as she checked out her new king. Q let out a growl as Mitsugu turned her head to look at her. I would appreciate that you didn't look at my mate like a piece of meat. Q said as she let out another growl. HMMPH, he doesn't look so tough. Soda said as he shook his head at the newly king. If you say so, just don't do anything that you will regret. Mitsugu said as she returned looking at Naruto. Naruto noticed that she was staring at him, so he winked at her, getting her to blush. Q noticed the interactions between Naruto and Mitsugu. You sure did get yourself a nice little treat, Q-chan. Mitsugu said as Soda growled. How about I challenge him after everyone's done eating and the winner get you? Getting a laugh from Mitsugu. He will defiantly will kill you. Didn't you feel his ki earlier, plus he increased it, so I doubt that he unleashed all of it. Soda walked down the table towards Naruto. Mitsugu looked at Q. He has always had eyes for you. I just hope that Naruto-sama won't kill him. Q gave her a smile that sent a shiver down her spine. I can't promise anything, Q said as she went back to her meal. Soda approached Naruto's end of the table. Manda and Katsuyu just finished explaining the history between Soda and Q, which he didn't mind cause everyone had a pass. Naruto saw Soda and didn't pay him any attention, which made Soda even more angrier. Naruto-sama, I challenge you, Soda said as he stood straight in front of his king. Naruto wiped his mouth as he turned to face Soda as everyone at the table stopped talking. On what grounds do you challenge your king? Naruto asked as he kind of knew what the wolf wanted. I challenge you for Q-chan and nothing more. Naruto raised an eye at him and looked at Q. Q just shrugged her shoulders as if she didn't care at all. Does Q-chan not want to be with me anymore? Naruto thought hard on that until Q spoke to him through the link. I know that you can win Naru-kun, so beat him so he will stop pestering me for a date. Naruto smirked as he faced Soda. Alright, but after everyone done eating, and since you're trying to take my mate away from me, how about we make it a death match? Soda now realizing the severity of his mistake. Hi Naruto-sama. Soda bowed as he made his way back to his seat. As Soda sat down, Mitsugu laughed at him. Baka, I told you not to do anything stupid and now you're going to die. She told the now frightened wolf in front of her. Mitsugu looked at Q. So Naruto won't actually kill one of the leaders he just met, right? This time Shien spoke. Yes, he will. I heard stories of daddy killing people for looking at mommy, and Soda-san said that he wanted to take mommy away from him. I was surprised that daddy didn't kill him where he stood. Shien finished as Soda started to panic. Should I need to get out of this? He said to himself as he tried to think of different ways to get out of the duel. Shien looked at Mitsugu. So how did you meet my mother? She asked as took another bite of food. Mitsugu thought for a while. It was so long ago I forgot how I met Q-chan. Mitsugu said to the young fox. Shien looked at her mother to see if she remembered how they met. Well, I was running through the woods when I found you. Q said to Mitsugu as her face lit up as she remembered. That's right, I fell from a tree and broke my leg and you brought me here and nursed me back to health and we instantly became friends. Mitsugu said as she finished Q's story. Naruto waved Maka over and whispered in her ear. Get the word out that Soda-san has challenged me to a fight for Q-chan, make sure that the villagers know and make their way to the stadium. Naruto finished as he watched the maid bow and disappear to relay his message. Battle Arena. The stadium was loud with the citizens of Kitsun Springs as Q took her seat with the other leaders. Q waited a few minutes before she addressed the stadium. Q stood up as she approached the podium. Citizens of Kitsun Springs, you are gathered here today to witness a challenge issued by Soda-san, the leader of the Wolves. He challenged Naru-kun for my hand in marriage. The stadium was loud again with murmurs. You can do it, Naru-kun, we believe in you. Naruto heard from multiple women. Naruto took out his black katana and got into a defensive stance. Do you have any last words? Naruto asked as he watched Soda take out his own sword. Soda gave him a chuckle. Why yes, after I win I might take your daughter as well. That made Naruto see red as he unconsciously focused chakra into his eyes. Naruto yelled out in pain as he tried to cover his eyes. Q smirked as she watched. So he finally awoken it. Q said to herself as she reopened the mind link. Naruto, you just awoken fox glare. It's a dojutsu that we foxes use. It's like the Byakugan, but instead of you seeing an opponent's chakra points, you see their pain and pleasure points. As you can see, the red ones are the pain and green are pleasure points. Q told him as Naruto uncovered his eyes. Soda noticed that Naruto's eyes had changed from blue to a dark pink color. Soda took no time as he charged Naruto to strike him. Naruto blocked Soda's sword as he quickly hit one of Soda's pain points on his forearm. Soda screamed in pain as he jumped back. What the hell did you do to me? Soda growled out as he rubbed his now tingling arm. Naruto smirked. I hit a pain point in your arm, but don't worry, we just began. I still have to punish you for your comment about my children. Naru-kun, I think that I know how you can eliminate him and make him endure as much pain as possible. Q told Naruto the plan through the mind link. Soda noticed that Naruto wasn't all there as he charged him again. Naruto just finished talking to Q as he saw Soda rush towards him again. Naruto dodged Soda's attack and made some distance between them. Die. Again Soda launched himself at Naruto. Naruto was prepared fully this time, using his fox glare to the fullest. Naruto focused a high amount of chakra into his legs and sidestepped Soda's attack as he poked 3 more points on Soda's chest, sending him off balance. Naruto didn't want to waste an opening and quickly continued his attack. Making sure his attacks were fast as possible, he quickly hit 2 more points in Soda's gut, followed by an elbow to his face. In his moment of attack, aiming for critical areas, Naruto left himself open and Soda instantly took advantage of it. Soda slammed his fist into Naruto and sent him flying into the stadium's wall. Naruto's vision was blurring as he couldn't see straight now. The punch that Soda had given him had hurt unlike anything he ever felt before. Two can play that game. Soda chuckled as he wiped blood from his mouth. Q-chan, I thought only we could use Fox Glare. He thought as he pried himself from the wall. He didn't use Fox Glare, he used the wolf's speed, and at the last moment he focused all of his power into the punched. Q told him as she straightened up in her seat as she watched her lover and sun-like figure dust himself off. Naruto had a difficult time standing up straight as he realized that he needed a few more seconds to recover. However, Soda wasn't going to let him to do so as he charged the pink-eyed blonde intending to deliver the finishing blow. Naruto thought back to what Q told him earlier. Quickly Naruto made 1,000 shadow clones. Each of the Narutos reached and pulled out a solid black kunai with a seal wrapped around the hilt. All at once they threw the kunais at Soda, as he had to deflect a few. Soda laughed at the blonde. I guess that the great king needs to practice his throwing. Soda said mockingly as the stadium started to boo him. Don't worry, when I get Q-Heim I will personally teach her, if you get my drift. Soda said in a low tone just for Naruto. Naruto growled at what he just heard. I'm going to make you wish that you didn't say that. He growled out. Soda laughed at him. And exactly how are you going to do that? You can't even hit me with a kunai. Naruto gave him an evil grin that sent a shiver down Q's and Naya's spine. I can't wait for our alone time. They both thought as they started to drool. Naruto sheathed his sword and looked at Soda. Why exactly make you think I was aiming at you? He said as Soda gave him a questionable look. Soda looked at the kunai as he noticed that they all had a weird seal on them. Before Soda could ask, he watched the blonde flash in front of him. Naruto smirked at him. Like I said, what makes you think I was aiming at you? Naruto disappeared just as Soda swung at him. Naruto flashed around Soda, hitting pain points all around his body. Alright, just one more should do it. Naruto thought as he hit the last point on Soda. Naruto stopped in front of Soda as he fell to the ground and tried to scream but couldn't. Naruto looked down at the wolf leader as he twitched and convulsed on the ground. Like I said, I'm going to punish you before I kill you. Naruto said as he took out his sword and walked up to Soda. Naruto noticed that Soda was about to pass out from the pain as a couple of his clones picked Soda up. Naruto lifted Soda's chin up with his sword. I hope that whoever takes your place won't be arrogant and reckless as you. Naruto brought his sword down quickly as Soda's head rolled off of his body. Naruto's clones dropped Soda's body and dispelled. Naruto sweated and was out of breath a little as he looked up at the other leaders as the whole stadium applauded him. The stadium started to chant his name as he smiled and blushed as he looked around the stadium. This village is the best, I'm going to miss it when I leave. He thought as Q picked up his negative emotions. Meeting hall. Naruto was back in his royal robes as he sat in front all of the leaders. Thank you all for coming and I apologize for the events that aspired. Naruto said as Naya grabbed his hand and intertwined hers with his and smiled at him. No need to apologize, Naru-kun. Soda overstepped his boundaries and paid greatly for it. Katsuyu said as she gave him a lovingly smile. Kuroki growled as she narrowed her eyes at her mother. What's she up to? And why is she acting that way towards him? Kuroki thought as she realized that her mother might have feelings for Naruto. Katsuyu had a different train of thought. I wish that I offered myself instead of Kuroki. I wonder if she'll mind sharing. Katsuyu thought as she giggled. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you, Lord Uzumaki, but I must take my leave. Pakun said as he bowed towards Naruto and Q. All of the leaders paid their respect and left except for Katsuyu and Manda as they were saying their goodbyes to their children. I'm going to miss you, princess. Manda said as he gave Naya a tight hug. Same goes for you, Kuroki-chan. Katsuyu added as she gave Kuroki a kiss on her forehead. Naru-kun, would you mind walking me to the village gates? Katsuyu asked as she walked towards the door. Naruto smiled as he walked with her. You know you're welcome to visit any time to see Kuroki-chan. Naruto said as he walked beside Katsuyu. They reached the gates and Katsuyu turned to Naruto. And what about you? She asked as Naruto gave her a confused look. What do you mean, what about me? Naruto replied. Katsuyu gave him a smile while she walked up towards him and wrapped her arms around his neck and gave him a long passionate kiss. I mean, can I visit to see you also? Katsuyu whispered in his ear. Yat that W would be fine also. Naruto stuttered out as his face turned beet red. Katsuyu giggled at him as she let go of him. I'm glad that my daughter is in your care. Naruto smiled at her. You mean that you don't care that your daughter might be wed to a human? He asked as he looked down. Katsuyu saw this and picked his chin up and pressed her forehead against his. Of course not, Naru-kun. I actually get along with humans just fine. Hoping that he would get what she meant. Naruto blushed at what she had told him. I do hope that you will visit again real soon. He finished as Manda approached them. Naruto-san, I know that I don't have to say this, but please keep my daughter safe. Manda finished and bowed. Naruto nodded. Don't worry, Manda-san, I would never put either of your daughters in harm. He finished as he looked at Katsuyu. Back at the mansion, Naya smiled at Kuroki. I'm glad that I will know someone as we go through this. Kuroki said as Q walked into the room. You know that neither of you have to marry Naru-kun if you don't want to. The bond that the foxes have with both of your clans won't change. She finished as Kuroki waved her hands in a defensive way towards Q. That's not what I meant, I was just saying that I would be even more nervous without Naya-chan. I look forward spending time with Naruto. Kuroki finished feeling embarrassed as Naya nodded that she agreed what Kuroki said. Q nodded and clapped her hands as the tree maids appeared in the room. That's good to hear. This is Maka, Shiro, and Yui. They'll show you two around while I help my children change. Both Naya and Kuroki introduced themselves to the maids as they followed them around the mansion. Do anyone know when Naru-kun will be back? Naya asked the maids as they arrived at the living room. Maka and Yui both shook their heads no as Shiro went into a thinking pose. Well, it takes about 5 minutes to reach the gates and 5 back, plus I bet that Naru-kun will stop and get the girls a treat on the way back. Shiro finished as the two princesses took a seat on the couch. Q and her two kids came in at the last part of what Shiro told them. Why don't you turn on the television and flip to channel 874? Q said as Naya picked up the remote and did what Q had said. Kaga perked up as she pointed. Hey, it's the village's gates. Q laughed at her daughter. This is what Naru-kun sees and hears. Both Naya and Kuroki looked at each other. Does Naru-kun know? They both said at the same time. Q giggled again. Of course he knows, I wouldn't invade in his privacy. As they all turned their attention back towards the television. Village. Naruto just said his goodbyes and started to make his way back home. He smiled and greeted the different stall vendors. You were amazing today, Naruto-sama. One of the villagers said as he walked up to a group of kids. Naruto stood back as he watched the children count their money. We don't have enough for ice cream. The little girl that counted the money said as they all dropped their ears. He. They remind me of Kaga-chan and Shion-chan when they can't have any sweets. Naruto thought as he approached the kids. Maybe I can help. Naruto said as the kids looked up at him. Naruto-sama, you would do that for us? The little girl asked. Naruto bent down and patted her head. Of course I would do anything for my special people so you guys can get anything that you want. As he finished, the children's eyes went wide as they tackled Naruto into a hug. Thank you, Naruto-sama. They all replied as they ordered their ice cream. Naruto watched as the kids ran to a nearby park and ate their ice cream. That was very nice of you, Naru-kun. The vendor purred out. It was nothing, Yuno-chan. Naruto said as he paid for the treats. Sure, it was you made their day, and I'm pretty sure that they won't forget it either. She said as she prepared the dango for the princesses. Yuno handed Naruto the dango as he went to pay. Yuno waved him off. You don't have to pay, this is on the house. Yuno said as she pulled him close to her and licked his cheek. Kaga growled as she watched her father. Why did Yuno kiss daddy? Naya and the others chuckled at her as they went back to watching the television. Naruto looked at Yuno. What was that for? As he touched the place that she licked. Just because and when you time comes I want you to think of me when you enter your cycle. Naruto looked at her weirdly as Yuno chuckled and winked at him. Just keep me in mind. As Naruto turned to walk away still tired from the fight. This time the girls heard Q growl and leak a little key. That little vixen trying to corrupt my Naru-kun. Shion looked at her mother. What did Yuno-chan mean, Ka-san? Q's eyes went wide as she realized that her daughters were watching too. Nothing, I will explain when you and Kagaheim are older. Q said as she went back to the TV. Naruto walked through the village with a bag of dangos for his daughters. He stopped in front of a jewelry store as he looked at different rings and necklaces. I wonder what the girls like, he said to himself. Q's and the others' eyes were big as they watched him enter the store. Q quickly changed the channel as Kuroki groaned in protest. I wanna see what he's going to get. Kuroki whined as Naya's sweat dropped. But Kuroki-chan, if he does buy us something, how are we going to be surprised? Naya told her friend. Naya-chan is right, Kuroki, plus we watched him enough. Q added to what Naya was saying. Naruto walked up to the counter that held all of the necklaces and gazed at them, until he set his eyes on a fox pendant that was made out of turquoise and another made out of amethyst. Can I help you with anything today, Lord Uzumaki? A small woman asked behind the counter. Why, yes, I would like to get both of the fox pendants you have here. Naruto said as he pointed to the necklaces. Naruto sealed away the jewelry and sweets into a scroll and started to make his way back home. Dinner. Naruto sat down as the three maids brought the food to the table. Naruto chuckled as Kaga rushed to sit beside him. So daddy, what movie are we going to watch tonight? Kaga asked as she scooted closer to Naruto. Naruto didn't respond as Kaga puffed out her cheeks and tugged on Naruto's sleeve. What? Naruto asked as he shook his head to get rid of his current thoughts. Kaga again looked up and repeated her question. I said, what movie are we going to watch tonight? Naruto smiled at his daughter. Whatever you guys decide is fine with me. He finished as he patted her head. Naya sat on the other side of Naruto with Kuroki next to her as they watched the table being set. Shiro finished as she sat down with Maka and Yui. Naya let out a small growl as she watched the maids sit down. What do you three think you're doing? Naya asked in a strict voice. We're sorry, Lady Naya, we didn't mean to offend you. Maka said to the snake princess as she stood up with the other two maids got up slowly as they looked at Naruto for assistance, but he was out of it again. The maids left the room with their heads down and watery eyes. Why didn't Naru-kun stick up for us? Maka asked her friends as they entered the kitchen. I don't know, Shiro said as she rubbed Maka's back to comfort her. Back at the table, Kaga gave Naya a dirty look. Why did you yell at them? Kaga growled out as Naya closed her eyes. Because servants don't eat with US nobles, maybe you should learn how to act as a princess. Q walked into the dining room with Shion to see Kaga and Naya yelling at each other as Kuroki tried calming her friend down and Naruto looking off into space. Q raised her key as she sat down. Would someone tell me why the two of you are yelling? She finished as she poured herself some tea. Q sipped her tea as she looked at her daughter first for her side. Well, Ka-san, Naya here yelled at Maka-chan and the others for sitting down at the table. Kaga finished as she gave Naya another dirty look. I see is all of what Kagaheim said true. Naya? Q asked as she looked at the snake princess. Naya nodded her head. Yes, Q-sama, I had to educate Kaga that servants don't eat with nobility. Q looked at Naruto and narrowed her eyes. What did Naru-kun say when you yelled at the maids? Q asked everyone at the table and this time Kuroki spoke up. Nothing, he's been acting weird. Kaga-chan had to repeat her question and basically he's been zoned out. Q nodded her head as she got up and walked over to Naruto and placed her hand on his forehead. Q's hand started to glow red as she pumped some of her chakra into him. After a few minutes Naruto looked at Q. What are you doing, Q-chan? He asked as he dazed into her eyes. Well, Naru-kun, Fox glare put a strain on not only your body but your mind as well. The only reason that you're not in a coma is because of me healing you from the inside. Q finished as Naya and Kuroki eyes went as big as saucers. So that's the reason that you picked him to be king? Naya asked as she pointed at Naruto. Naruto felt hurt that they didn't think that he was capable of being king. As he looked around the table, he noticed that there was a few missing people. Where's Maka-chan and the others? He asked as Kaga growled. Naya yelled at them for sitting at the table. Kaga told her father as he looked at Naya. Well, they're servants and don't belong at the table. Naya said as she looked down. I see. Naruto said as he stood up and unsealed the dangos and handed it to Q. I'm going to go get something light and go to bed. I had a tiring day but enjoy the movie and dangos. Naruto finished as he walked into the kitchen. Q looked at the snake and slug princess. The information that you just learned about me being sealed into Naruto is top secret, and if you tell anyone I will not only kill you but I will destroy your whole clan. Q finished as she started to fix her plate. Naya and Kuroki looked at each other and spoke at the same time. We understand, Q-sama. Naruto entered the kitchen as he was greeted by 3 sad foxes. Naruto walked up and hugged each of them, explaining why he didn't stand up for them. Naruto finished as he pulled out a chair and sat down with them. Naruto, why you don't need to eat with us? Yui said as she watched him make a plate for himself. He smiled at them. I know I want to cause you 3 are my friends and I hate that Naya-chan made you guys feel bad. Naruto said as he gave them a foxy grin. Naruto finished eating and placed his dishes in the sink. He turned around to say good night to each of them as he licked each of their cheeks and made his way to bed. All 3 maids had red faces as they held the place that Naruto had licked, as the same thought ran through all of their minds. Naruto kissed me. Kaga opened her eyes as she looked around for her father, but he was nowhere in sight. She frantically scurried around in hope that she would find him. Where is Daddy? He never wakes up without me. Kaga whimpered as she hopped back onto the bed. Q opened one of her eyes as she watched her daughter pout as she pulled her into a hug. Go back to sleep, Kaga-hime. I'm sure that Naru-kun will come get you when you 2 normally wake up. Kaga gave her mother a weird look as she looked over to the alarm clock and noticed the time. I wonder why Daddy woke up so early. Kaga pondered as she nuzzled into her mother. Naruto finished his last lap around the village as he made his way to his personal training ground. I got to get stronger, if yesterday was any indication. He was to concern how badly his chakra control was that he didn't hear his name being called. Naru-kun. He finally snapped out of his thoughts as he looked at the person that was calling his name. Oh, sorry Yuno-chan, I wasn't paying attention, he said to the dango shop owner. Yuno chuckled as she waved him over. What are you doing out so early this morning? She asked as she opened up her shop. Naruto sighed as he helped her take the chairs off the tables. Just my fight I had with Soda-san. He responded, too embarrassed to tell her the real reason. I think you were amazing. I didn't think you were that strong. Yuno said to the blonde as she made her way towards the kitchen. Naruto sat at the bar as he looked away embarrassed. So you don't think someone like me is strong enough to lead either? Yuno looked up as she picked up on what he was saying. That's not what I meant, Naru-kun. It's not every day that we get to see fights between leaders. Yuno said as she waved her hands in front of her. What do you mean? Naruto asked as he tilted his head. He's so cute. Yuno thought as she spoke again. Well, Naru-kun, when leaders challenge each other it's usually a private matter. Naruto was wide-eyed as he thought he did something wrong as a king. So I messed up, Naruto said as his shoulders dropped. Yuno sighed as she finished the first batch of sweets. No, Naru-kun, you didn't mess up and you could never mess up as king. She replied as she started on the second batch. Naruto smiled at what she said to him. Thanks, Yuno-chan. He replied as he scratched the back of his head. Yuno blushed as she looked at his foxy smile. God, I can't wait till his cycle, it should be around that time. she thought as she pulled out another batch of dango for Naruto. There you go Naru-kun, tell Kaga-chan and Shion-chan I said hi. Yuno said as she handed Naruto the dango as he sealed them away and paid. Thanks Yuno-chan, I see you the same time tomorrow, he said as he made his way back towards the training grounds. Naruto arrived at the training ground and made as many clones that he could. Naruto looked up at his clones. Alright, for today I want all of you to learn tree walking, he said as he took out a scroll and went to a nearby tree to read up on chakra control while his clones worked on tree walking. Naruto reread his scroll on chakra control hoping that he would find an easy way to increase his. Naruto looked up as he realized what time it was. Better get going or Kaga-hime will freak out that I'm not there, he said to himself as he stood up. Naruto looked over at his clones trying to decide to dispel them or not. Better dispel them, I don't want to be too tired for training today, he thought as he watched all of his clones disappear. Mansion. Naruto walked into his house and made his way towards his bedroom. As Naruto entered the bedroom and saw that Q and his daughters snuggling together, he smiled as he made his way towards his bathroom. Kaga perked her head up as she smelled her father enter the bathroom. Yay, daddy's home, Kaga thought as she made her way to the bathroom as well. Kaga entered the washroom just as Naruto was rinsing himself off. Good morning daddy, where did you go this morning? Kaga asked as she started to get undressed. Naruto smiled at his daughter's separation issues. Good morning Kaga-hime, I just went for a run and practiced improving my chakra control, Naruto said as he started to wash her hair. Kaga smiled as she sat in front of her father so he could wash her hair. Do you think that I could come and train with you next time? She asked, hoping that he would say yes. I don't know Kaga-hime, I get up really early and train hard, he finished as he saw Kaga's ears go flat. How about tomorrow when I get up I try and wake you up and we can give it a try? Kaga's ears perked back up as she made her way to the hot springs. Naruto laughed as he made his way to the hot springs. So Kaga-hime, since you want to get stronger, why don't you come and train with me after breakfast? He said as he sat down in the water. Kaga's sweat dropped as she hesitated. Sure daddy, I would love to, she said as she scooted closer to Naruto. Naruto and Kaga got dressed and walked in the dining room and waited for the food. Yui came out of the kitchen shortly after they sat down. Good morning Kaga-sama, Naru-kun, Yui said as she placed the food on the table. Naruto smiled at her as he watched Maka and Shiro enter the room. Good morning Naru-kun, they both said at the same time. Good morning to you too, he said as he fixed Kaga's plate. Yui and the others were about to sit down when Naya came into the room. They all stood up and started to make their way back to the kitchen. Naruto didn't notice that the three maids were leaving until Kaga tapped his arm. Where are you guys going? Naruto asked as the maids were almost to the kitchen. Sorry Naru-kun, but we respect Naya-sama, so we won't eat at the table with you, Maka said as she bowed and walked away. Naya sat down next to Naruto as Q, Shion, and Kuroki walked in and took seats around the table. Naya-chan, why don't you like Maka and the others eating at the table with us? He asked as he looked over at her. Well, that's because they're servants and don't belong with nobility, she responded as Naruto sighed. Naruto thought for a second as he asked another question. Would you eat with an orphan that became a noble? He asked as he raised an eyebrow. This got Q's attention as she looked at Naya and waited for her response. Naya shook her head. No, I wouldn't. That person wouldn't be a noble, just an orphan with a noble title, no different than the servants. Naruto looked down at his plate as he was contemplated what to do next. Naruto stood up and took his plate and walked to the kitchen. Naya gave him a look. Where are you going? She asked as Naruto stopped and looked over his shoulder. I'm going to go eat with the servants since I'm no better than one and I don't want to offend you, he continued to the kitchen. Q growled at Naya and leaked out some of her ki. Just so you both know, Naru-kun was an orphan before he became king. Kyu said as she looked at both Naya and Kuroki as she continued eating her breakfast. I have to apologize to him, I didn't know, and I said that he was no better than a servant. Naya said as she got up and made her way towards the kitchen. Naruto was eating next to Shiro and Maka as he was telling them how his training was going as Naya entered. Naruto stopped eating as he looked at Naya. Can I help you, Naya-san? He asked as Naya noticed the suffix he used. Why yes, Naru-kunai, I'm sorry for what I said earlier, I didn't know that you were an orphan. Naruto closed his eyes as he thought of a way for Naya to understand how he felt. I have an idea, I'm going to have Kyu-chan show you and Kuroki-chan my past, and if you still don't want to eat with me, Yui, Maka, or Shiro, then I think that it would be safe to say that we won't work and I will have an escort take you home. Naruto finished as Naya's eyes started to water. Sure Naru-kun, if that's what I'll have to do to stay with you and for you to forgive me, then I'll accept. Naya said as she exited the kitchen. Naya came back to the table trying to hold back her tears. Kyu narrowed her eyes at her. So what did Naru-kun say? Kyu asked as Naya sat down. He said that he was going to have you show Kuroki-chan and I his past, and he said that if I still don't want to eat with him or the servants, then we wouldn't be together anymore. Naya sobbed as she looked down at her plate as Kuroki rubbed her back. Don't worry, Naya-chan, I'm sure that Naru-kun will forgive you, and just think, we'll get to know more about our future husband. Kuroki chuckled as she watched her friend's face go red. Naya smiled at her friend. You always look for the bright side of things. Kyu coughed to get both of their attention. Just a heads up, the things that you two are going to see might scar you. Kyu said the two princesses. Kuroki and Naya both swallowed a lump in their throats as they look at each other. Training grounds. Naruto stood in front of Rina, Miyaku, Tamaki, and Kana as Kyu arrived with his daughters, Naya, and Kuroki. Alright Naru-kun, we are ready for you. Kyu stated as she made her way over to a tree to sit down. Naruto nodded. Alright Kyu-chan, I be right over. Naruto said as he looked back at his teachers. Alright guys, after my fight with Soda-san I was exhausted and out of it. I need help improving my chakra control, so each of you are going to get 100 extra clones and I want you to help them doing chakra control exercises based on what you're teaching me. He finished saying as he made the correct amount of clones and made his way over to Kyu. Kuroki and Naya sat down next to Kyu as Naruto made his way over. Kaga and Shion were excited to see their father's past as they skipped over to the group. Naruto saw his daughters and started to wave his hands. No, you two will not be looking at my past. Naruto said as he walked up to his daughters. I will have a shadow clone teach you two for today. Naruto said as he made a clone for each of them. Kaga and Shion looked up and pouted. But daddy, we really want to see your past. Naruto saw this and smiled as he tossed one of his clones a scroll. Tell you what, if you two do really good today you will get a special treat. He finished as the two little foxes perked up. Naruto sat down in between Naya and Kuroki as he watched his daughters went off to train with his clones. Alright Kyu-chan, I'm ready. Naruto said as he got comfortable. Naya-chan, Kuroki-chan, you two need to be touching me and Naru-kun. Kyu said as Kuroki and Naya grabbed each one of his in her hands. Kyu channeled chakra and dragged them all into Naruto's mindscape. Naruto's mindscape. Naya and Kuroki were speechless as they were standing in front of a small house. Wow Naru-kun, your mind is beautiful. Kuroki said as she looked around his mindscape. Thanks Kuroki-chan, we should head to the house so we can watch my past. Naruto said and smiled as he made his way to his house. They all entered the house and made their way to the living room and sat down. Kyu brought out drinks and a box of tissues. Thank you Kyu-sama, but why did you bring tissues? Naya asked as she grabbed a drink off the tray that Kyu had brought. Kyu sighed as she picked up the TV remote and sat down closely near Naruto. Well, because I always get upset when I watch Naru-kun's past. Kyu nuzzled up to Naruto as she pressed play on the remote. Naya and Kuroki watched as the movie started to play. Naruto was 3 in this memory. Q stated as they watched closely. A little Naruto smiled as he ran in the bathroom and tried to comb his hair. Today is the day he said as watch his hair poofed back out. Naruto ran out of the bathroom and into a larger room as he stood in line with other kids. Naruto had an ear-to-ear smile as he watched a man and woman go and meet each of the kids until they reached him. The couple growled as they looked down at him, "They let you near other children." The woman spat out as she and her husband walked over to the person that was in charge of the orphanage. The couple walked out as the woman that ran the orphanage gave Naruto a evil look. Sorry kids, they didn't want any kids that were tainted by a demon. She finished as all of the kids looked at Naruto. Naruto sat on his bed as the other kids entered his room. "We would have gotten adopted today if it wasn't for you," an older boy said as he pushed Naruto. The kids pushed and hit Naruto for the next few minutes as he was able to escape. Naruto cried as he walked up to caretaker. The other kids P pushed me and H hit me," Naruto said as he sobbed. The woman looked down and growled. "I don't care," she said as Naruto started to cry even more. "Stop your crying or I give you something to cry about." Naruto cried even more as he looked up. But before Naruto could get out another word he was smacked. Naruto held his cheek as he started to bawl as he was picked up and thrown into a closet. "I let you out when you decide to act better," she said as she closed and locked the door. Naya and Kuroki were crying as they looked at Naruto. What was her name? Naruto scrunched up his face to think. "I really don't remember, to be honest," he replied as he turned his attention back to the television. They watched as a small Naruto cried in the closet as the show faded out. "What happened?" Kuroki asked as Q pressed play on the next episode. That was the end of that particular memory, as Q told her. They watched an older version of Naruto. Naruto is 3 years old in this one too, Q stated as they watched Naruto. Naruto was picking through garbage can trying to find something to eat. Naruto came out of an alleyway as he watched villagers start to decorate and hang lights. "I wonder what's going on," Naruto said to himself as he started to look for food again. It was getting darker as Naruto walked through the streets and looked at the festival that was going on. Many of the vendors gave him dirty looks as he made his way through the crowd. "There he is, get the demon," a villager yelled as Naruto looked at what the commotion was. A drunken villager hit Naruto and slurred out some hurtful things to him. Something in Naruto told him to run, so he did as the mob started to chase him. Naruto was running from the angry villagers for a few minutes as he made his way through the village. Naruto ran around a corner and wasn't paying attention as he ran into a brown-haired woman. I'm sorry miss, I wasn't looking where I was going," Naruto said as he got up and seen that the villagers caught up to him. Sum smiled as she helped the little boy up. "It's alright pup, just watch where you're going. Where is your parents?" she asked just as the mob came around the corner. One of the villagers started to laugh. "Thanks for catching the demon for us," he said as Sum looked down at the blonde-haired boy and saw his whiskers. "He's Kushina's little boy," Sum thought as she brought Naruto closer to her. "No one is harming this little boy," Sum growled out as 3 more females came to her. "Is everything alright, Sum-chan?" the brunette-haired woman asked. "No, Hina-chan, these people want to hurt little Naruto," Sum said to the Hyuga. "You don't mean Kushina's boy?" the blonde asked as Sum nodded at her. The 4 women pulled out a kunai and got into a defensive pose. "Let's leave guys, we'll get him later," the leader said as the mob dispersed. Sum looked down at the filthy-looking blonde. "Are you hungry, Naruto?" Sum asked as Naruto nodded his head. "We can go back to my place. Shikaku is out on a month-long mission," the brunette said as they guided the group to her house. Yoshino and the other women was cooking in the kitchen while Naruto watched until Sum sniffed the air. Sum kept sniffing the air and followed the smell to Naruto. "Naruto, when was the last time that you had a bath?" Sum asked as she plugged her nose. Naruto looked down. "I haven't bathed since I was kicked out of the orphanage," he said as he got teary-eyed. Suum looked at Yoshino, Hina, and Yuzuki. Well, I guess that we have to bathe you. She smiled as Yoshino showed them where the bathroom was. You guys wash him while I go get some clothes for him. Suum said as she shunshin away. You two go ahead while I finish cooking. Yoshino said to her friends. Naruto looked over at Q. Why don't I remember this? He asked as he tried his hardest to remember. Well, Naru-kun, I sealed away your bad memories until you were ready to see them. She finished as she returned her attention back at the screen. Suum came back just as Hina and Yuzuki finished washing Naruto. Here ya go, pup. Suum said as she tossed Naruto a black shirt, brown shorts and a gray puffy jacket. Naruto got dressed and went downstairs and sat at the table staring at Hina. The women noticed this. Is there something wrong, Naruto? Hina asked as Naruto gave her a cute smile. No, sorry, I just think that your eyes are really beautiful, he said as Hina blushed and the others giggled at his statement. Naruto looked at the women. Thank you for saving me from the villagers, Naruto said with a small blush. Suum giggled. Don't worry about it, Naruto. Naruto smiled at them, then it dawned on him. I never did get your names, he said as the women looked at each other with big eyes. Sorry about that, Naruto, but as you already know, I'm Suum. The one with the pretty eyes is Hina Hyuga. This is Yuzuki Yamanaka, and the house we're in belongs to Yoshino Nara. Naruto nodded as he looked at each of them. Naruto mumbled as he looked down at his lap. What was that, Naruto? Yoshino asked as his face got redder. I said, will you be my Ka-sans? Naruto blurted out. All four women smiled as they went and hugged the little boy. Of course we will, Naruto, they all said at the same time. Naruto smiled as the memory faded away and the new one started. Naruto smiled as he walked down the road holding Hina's and Yuzuki's hands. The four women ended up taking Naruto to a playground and watched him play with their clan kids. Naruto, would you come over for a moment? Hina asked as Naruto hurried and ran up to them. We all have great news. Naruto looked at each of them to see who would tell him. You're going to be a big brother, all four said at the same time. Naruto's smile widened even wider as he looked at his mothers. Really? He asked as he was jumping up and down excited about the news. Yup, you're going to have a little sister, Suum said as she rubbed her belly. And a little brother. This time was Yoshino that spoke. Naruto looked at Hina and Yuzuki as they rubbed their stomachs as well. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet, Hina said as Yuzuki nodded. Neither do I. Naruto gave them all his famous foxy smile. It doesn't matter, I'm going to be the greatest brother in the world, he said as he gave them all a thumbs up. The girls giggled at him as they noticed that it was getting late as they walked him to his small apartment that they had purchased for him. Naruto gave them all a hug before entering his apartment. As Naruto closed the door to his apartment, two figures came out from the shadows. Naruto was hit and landed on the floor as a man came up to him. If you don't stay away from Hyuga-san and the others, the demon will kill their babies.